Welcome to our new episode about talent development in organizations, where we share our best practices on talent development. Today with us, Lisa Dempsey from Leadership Labs, and she's going to explain how leadership done right and talent development done right works in organizations. So first, Lisa, nice to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited.
Yes, me too. So where could people know you from?
Gosh, probably lots of different things. I've been busy in international business for a very long time, spoken at a lot of different conferences. For a long time, I was at a part of the thought leadership within global mobility. I was in the very early days of developing this term that's become more ubiquitous of talent mobility, so really marrying global mobility, which used to be a very boring, dry back office function, with talent and talent strategy. I've served on the board of a number of different organizations for women's leadership, for diversity and inclusion, and worked for a lot of really interesting organizations. So it could be anywhere.
could be a lot. And at the moment, you're mostly focusing on, as a founder, on Leadership Labs.
Absolutely.
And what is it what you do with Leadership Labs?
Well, so as the founder and CEO of Leadership Labs, our aim is to genuinely unleash the talent potential within individuals, teams, and entire organizations. It's something that feels really elusive still, and yet it doesn't have to be. But it's exactly because the really subtle, simple things that feel very common sense, very logical, they're hard to harness.
Yeah.
They're hard to get momentum behind. And I believe very much in empowering everybody to live, love, and lead out loud with courageous authenticity.
I love that tagline. I love it. I love it. Nice for sharing. So before we delve into the topic of talent development and leadership development, I would like to know, for you personally, what makes leadership development, why are you passionate about leadership development?
Long story, short version.
You can take as long as you want.
Well, the short version is, after having worked in a number of fairly large, fairly dynamic, fast-paced, hectic organizations in lots of different industries, I noticed that leadership, and genuine leadership, not just the idea of leadership and not just the people who are sitting in the C-suite, but people who could actually lead, was a really, truly defining factor in a lot of organizations. I didn't know how valuable it was until I came across a number of organizations where it was highly dysfunctional. So it's one of those things, if you don't know how good you have it until you don't.
Yeah.
And then I realized how many organizations are out there struggling because they don't.
Yeah. But it's good to see
leadership.
both perspectives, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. So if you look at your journey of personal development, what does personal development mean to you personally?
Gosh, personal development, I think, is the most important thing that every single human being has available to them. And that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's the space that helps you define you. Who you're going to be, who you want to be, where you're going. It's what puts you in the driver's seat of who you are and who you intend to be. So not just your current self, but your future self. It's also really important because it is the piece that helps us unlock our true gifts. The things that really give individuals their energy.
Yep.
So it's, the personal development is not only the making the career decisions and choices that you want, but also unlocking uniquely the aspects for you that give you energy and the fuel that you need to get to where you want to be. And the surprising thing is a lot of times people find in their own personal development as they start unraveling all of the things that, a lot of times there's some place where they don't want to be and they're on a path that they don't want to be on.
Yeah.
And the sooner people can figure that out, the better it is for them and the better it is for organizations.
And do you have the feeling you always traveled the path where you did the things you wanted to do?
Yes and no.
Sounds natural.
Yeah. Yes and no. I think it's, I know for myself, yes, I always felt very much in charge of my own career and always worked really hard to make proactive choices. But there were, now in hindsight, times that I recognize for myself where I definitely had sort of the wool pulled over my eyes. And I was chasing after things that I thought were going to be great, that I thought were going to be valuable, that I thought were important, that when I really tuned in and looked back, I realized, no, probably not so much. So, eyes wide shut sometimes.
Yeah, and perhaps there's also a kind of a hindsight bias where sometimes you make certain assumptions, and then you test them, and then you just found out it's not the way you expected it would be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of that as well.
Yeah.
I think everybody goes through that in their career. You go down one path thinking, there's this grand picture of this will be the ideal world, and then you discover, the reality isn't matching that.
Yeah.
But you always get to do a U-turn and take a different path if you want.
Yeah. So looking at leadership labs, you also state that our rapidly evolving world demands a new model of leadership. Could you tell us a little bit more on what this new model is and why it's so important?
Yeah, absolutely. The World Economic Forum has coined the term the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And it's this idea that we are in this incredibly fast-paced, growing environment where not only technology, but just the pace of change in everyday life is so significant and so extreme that we need to tune into ways of working and being together that are very different than what have traditionally worked. So it used to be that, a lot of the very traditional hierarchies and top-down models, there's this select group of people at the top of an organization who they're going to set the vision, they're going to make the decisions. At the time of the first industrial revolution, they were the ones with the education, they were the ones with the insight, and the people on the floor were lacking a lot of information. It was helpful for them to be told what to do. That model worked for a really long time. No longer. We now have really highly educated people who are in the workforce, people who have lots of ideas, lots of potential, lots of possibility. And in order to unlock that, we need a leadership model that's not sitting at the top of this hierarchy, at the top of this triangle, saying, well, from my perspective, this is where we have to go. We need leaders who are able to be curious, ask questions, invite different ideas to the table, invite different perspectives, because this is where the innovation that's going to help keep them and their company, the entire organization, relevant.
Yeah. So you already tell about some of the character traits good leaders should have, asking questions, empowering other people. What makes a good leader?
Gosh, lots of things. But if we distill it down to a lot of the basic things, I think bare bones, number one, especially now in our current workforces, everybody has the potential to be a leader in some facet. So this idea that leaders and leadership is somehow tied to hierarchy, that's an old idea that we need to let go of.
What you're saying in that everybody in his or own way is a leader at some point within a collaboration.
within a collaboration or within just the way that they choose to show up. There are different dimensions of leadership that exist. So you can lead in front, the way that we traditionally think of leaders, forging the way, and this is where we go. But it's also, there's something really important about being able to lead from behind, holding the space, holding ideas, making space and room for other people, or lead from the side with a certain level of expertise for very specific things. Those are leadership qualities as well, but understanding where you sit in those different dimensions and being able to yield to other people, and that's where the collaboration comes in, is incredibly important. At the end of the day, really good leadership is about empowering the people around you to be the best that they can be. So it's not about you and what you know, and yes, bringing your talent forth, but understanding that your talent may not be relevant 100% of the time. There might be people next to you, behind you, to the side, that have really important things that need to be brought to the table, and making space for that is leadership.
Yeah, nice. I love this perspective on that the focus of leadership should be on empowering other peoples instead of focusing on hierarchy and just telling people what to do. So now folks starting to focus on talent development, talent development of people within organizations. What would be your definition of talent development done right?
I love that question. Because I think there's so much talent development that isn't done well. It's being done with lots of really good intention and based upon lots of theory and ideas that, again, at one time were really relevant, that held importance, but because of the shift in the entire landscape and this incredible pace at which things are changing, it needs a really different perspective. Talent used to be this idea that there's this sort of select group of people in organizations that have more potential than others. So we're going to give them more time and attention, more investment in order to help them bloom. That's a very old paradigm. It's a very old way of going about it. What modern organizations, and particularly organizations that want to be at the forefront and that really want to unleash innovation, talent needs to be an inclusive term. It needs to be something where everybody feels that they do have some talent of some sort. As an organization, you've hired them for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? You have given that person a job for a reason. You believed in something, and it's your job as an organization to help unleash that. And that's for everybody. That's not just for a select group of people. And the reason that's important is because that's where the different ideas and perspectives that are going to help create the innovation live. So helping everybody embrace the talent that they have, give voice to the talent that they have, and hold space for it at the table is what's going to help keep those individuals and the entire organization relevant. Yeah.
So you're telling about the new paradigm, the fourth industrial revolution. So if we're looking at old ways of talent development, what makes talent development fail?
Gosh, there are lots of different ways that it can fail. I think currently the biggest ways that I see in organizations, whether they be big or small, is trying to put talent development in a corner. That it's this limited activity, that it's siloed, that it's for a select few, and that it should have typically a very small, very limited budget. And it's not about, it needs to have unlimited budget, but it really, I think organizations that understand that that's where their future lives and grows are the ones that will be successful, not just now, but longer term in the future.
With the need for continuous learning, an agile mindset to have these, to keep up with this constant pace of change, which keeps going faster and faster as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we're talking about this topic of talent development, and your specialty is leadership development. Mm-hmm. So how do the two relate to each other, in your opinion?
They're intimately intertwined.
And not siloed.
You're right. Not siloed. Okay. They should not be two different separate functions. No, unfortunately not. They should not be two different things that sit on an org chart that occupy different spaces. No, the reason that they need to be intimately intertwined is, again, empowering every individual to be a leader in their own way is really where the heart of innovation lives. When talent is a silo, when leadership is at a certain level or hierarchy, it's associated with certain pay grade or title or where you sit on an org chart, those become not only limiting factors to individuals and organizations, but they become the seeds that make organizations unravel.
Yeah. So, this is the fourth industrial revolution, and it's on its way. Looking further ahead at the future of work, what will talent development look like? What will leadership development look like? What's the role of HR in that perspective? I know I'm asking a lot of questions at the same time, but can you tell a little bit more about your vision about the future of work and future talent development? Yeah,
I think it's an important one. And of course, nobody has the exact answer, including myself. So as a good leader, I recognize this. That was the main reason
I came here, to answer that question.
I know. Unfortunately, I don't have I don't have the secret sauce. But that is a part of good future leadership, is understanding that we don't have the answers. We don't know for sure. Therefore, it becomes so much more important to be tuned into the here and now. What is happening now? Because if you're healthy and thriving and in a sustainable position now, that's going to perpetuate into the future. And you will be able to be in tune to the changes, whether it be internal, external, economic, environmental, whatever, that you need to be able and willing to respond to. So again, I used to be a part of really big board discussions on strategy and LRP, long-range planning, and strategic workforce planning, and where are we going to go, and where do we want to be in 30 years. And those strategic discussions are still really important. You still need to have some rough roadmap, but that roadmap is becoming less and less detailed because we're not able to forecast as much into the future. What used to be a really relevant 10-year plan. Yeah, you're not going to get a lot of accuracy out of a 10-year plan if it's incredibly detailed. If it's high level, this is our purpose. This is what our vision is for the future. This is the future we want to create.
Yeah.
That's really useful. That's really helpful information. The details and all of that project planning of the minuscule steps of how you're going to get there, that needs to be scaled back.
Yeah.
Because you need to have the agility to be able to react to things much more quickly, much more, in a much more robust way.
Yeah, and that's also in line with the agile way of working you see popping up everywhere, also for good reason, of course. So what you're actually saying is you need to have this intention, you need to have a rough plan, but you also have this saying, as expected, everything turns out differently.
Yeah, or the only constant is change.
Exactly.
That's the only thing you can rely on.
That's also one. But so then you should feel really comfortable with not knowing what exactly. what exactly will be. And this also asks something from people to be adaptable, to also have an agile mindset, to feel comfortable with not knowing where you exactly will go, but having this comfortable feeling that it will be okay.
Yeah. Well, not only comfortable, but also confident that things will be okay, that you have the ability to navigate even the most turbulent waters. But it requires a focus on what is important. It requires a focus on the future purpose, on the future vision, not on all of the turmoil and things.
All the day-to-day busyness that is going on a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So to be focused on core essence, on the things you want to achieve, but also feeling comfortable with not knowing exactly what it will be. So if you look at helping people to have an adaptable or agile mindsets, what are best practices in your opinion to make people thrive, to not only feel comfortable but thrive in that situation, in that context?
And I think that word is so important. Thrive is so important because it's so easy, especially when organizations are in crisis, either because of internal turmoil, external turmoil, whatever. But people are panicking because of the uncertainty, because things feel unclear. It's really easy. We switch into survival mode. It's our natural instinct as human beings. And in fact, neurologically, there's a different part of our brain that gets activated. It's a much more primitive part of the brain.
We have a lot of evolutionary mechanisms which are not quite helpful anymore.
Exactly. They no longer serve us well in our modern days where, yes, it's scary when you don't know what, next year's forecast is going to necessarily be. That triggers a response in us that goes back to a really primitive response that's no longer relevant. We're no longer being threatened by a saber-toothed tiger who's going to eat us alive. But it's still that part of our brain that's responding to it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So it actually, neurologically, what's happening is our executive function, the prefrontal cortex, where our rational, reasonable, common sense mind lives, that gets taken offline when we get distracted and overwhelmed by the fear, and the fear of the urgency, and the fear of the uncertainty. So the things that help prevent that are, some of them are they're very simple, straightforward, and yet again, makes them really hard because we underestimate their value. So it's things like having clarity. People, and whether they're in leadership positions or not, whether they're in management positions or not, people being willing to ask questions and be okay with the answer being, I don't know for now. Not allowing that to undermine trust. But how do you build trust in organizations? Well, it's about building psychological safety. So there's this really interesting sort of vicious circle that organizations quite frequently get themselves into, because there's the unknown, there's the uncertainty, and they get enveloped by it because there's the lack of the psychological safety for people to be comfortable with that answer of, I don't know for now.
Yeah, people feeling uncomfortable with it, but also I think perhaps a lot of people still expecting from management position people to know, and to know by all times. It reinforces the feeling of those managers that they should know.
Yeah. Then suddenly they're feeling threatened.
Exactly.
And then they're in panic mode, and things don't get better from there.
Yeah. All right. So if you're looking at getting to this new model of leadership, talent development done right, what are the main challenges to get to that beautiful reality?
Yeah, and it's not. I'm happy that you call it a reality, because it can be a reality. So often people fool themselves into thinking that's a perfect world. that doesn't
You mean
really...
that's an utopia we will never achieve, or
Exactly.
where we will never get to?
In the real world, things work very differently. It's a very typical response.
So show us the path. What are the obstacles to overcome to get to that very real world?
Yeah, well, to start living it and making it a reality, it requires a shift in focus, organizationally, team-wise, and also individually. The bread and butter of it, the bare bones, lies in creating the psychological safety. I think a lot of organizations fear the idea of psychological safety because it feels like somehow taking ownership of something and somehow protecting people from things. That isn't psychological safety, at least not in the current paradigm. There was again, going back to the first industrial revolution.
What does that lead to if you work the way you just described?
Trying to protect people actually ends up undermining the synchronicity and the effectiveness that can unfold in organizations, because suddenly you're trying to protect people from things as opposed to being in the reality with people and being in that uncomfortable space. Can
you also roughly translate it to the best way to help people is sometimes not by directly helping people?
Absolutely.
So to have them experience their own struggle, to learn and to empower them to overcome their struggles instead of shielding them from those struggles.
Absolutely, and not feeling the need to protect them from it, and accepting the fact that there's going to be something that they can learn from that struggle, and that's something that I think is often overlooked. Going back to talent development, is really easily overlooked. We want to, in talent development programs, provide the right people at the right time with the right skills. Well, part of the right skills is people being able to make their way through really tough times.
Yes.
So this is an actual skill that you need to be developing. So it's not the job of a talent development group to serve something up on a silver platter and say, here, these are all the skills that you're going to need.
Grab whichever you like.
Yeah, exactly. Here, this is, just untie the ribbon and there it all is, ready to unfold for you. No, this isn't the reality. Going back to the protectiveness, though, for just a second, tying it back to leadership, one of the reasons why it's really important as well is, as a leader, being uncomfortable in that uncomfortable space with somebody is a really important leadership skill. Being able to name it and being able to talk to somebody about it in a really authentic and grounded way.
Yes. Yeah.
Is incredibly important, because somehow it disarms the fear. It takes away that really primitive part of our brain that wants to take over and sends people into fight or flight or all sorts of crazy behaviors that we see in organizations. And it allows people to get through those rough experiences in a really valuable way that they genuinely take lessons from and they thrive as a result from, not just survive.
What I find interesting, what I'm curious to hear your thoughts on. So leaders are to create a safe space, but not being too protective.
Yeah, safety doesn't mean comfortable and protective.
Exactly. So to make clear, what would be the difference between creating a safe space and not creating a too protective space?
Yeah, the defining factor is how people are showing up. Can people really show up with the very real life problems that they're facing? And facing as a whole person. So whether it be somebody turning up going, oh, I'm having such a hard time on this project because you know what? There's somebody in the project group that's being really difficult and I don't know how to deal with it. And being willing to be very honest about that and there being the space to have a meaningful conversation about it, as opposed to, well, have you tried this, or have you done this, or what about A, B, C, D? Let me try and fix that problem for you. Or let me pick up the phone, I'll call the project sponsor and tell them to get that person in line.
Yeah.
It's thinking with that person, not for that person. And that's a really big difference.
Yeah, but it's a nice distinction to emphasize.
Yeah.
Looking to your own business, Leadership Labs. What's your ambitions? Where do you want to go to?
Bottom line is genuinely change the future of leadership. Change this paradigm.
That's it.
That's it.
Nothing else. That's all there's to it.
It's simple, right?
That's everything. All right. So we've talked a lot about vision, about leadership, about talent development, and how the two relate to each other. Also, when you look at, and there's so thanks so far for all the nice value bombs you've dropped so far. But to make it really, really practical, what can organizations start doing today to improve talent development within their organization?
Take it out of the silo. Make it something that is an integrated part of the business strategy. That requires people in talent development to step up and up their game as well, to no longer allow themselves to be sidelined. As somebody who, grew up through the HR function, I know how easy it is for HR to be sidelined as a function, to be viewed as just simply a cost center. But one thing that I would hope every single talent development professional out there knows and can stand tall in. So not just rationally know, but genuinely feet firm on the ground, know that what they're doing provides long-term strategic value to the entire organization. And they deserve a seat at the table for all of the long-term strategic discussions.
Yeah.
Not just once a year, not just once every 6 months.
I could not agree more. If you hear a lot of organizations, you hear them say our people are the most important asset within our organization. And then, a seat at the table is not too much to ask, I would say.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And what I know from my own experience is people in the C-suite, they are hungry for HR to step up. They're hungry for talent development people to step up. And you want to be careful not to take ownership, because you can't own all of the talent in the business. It's about empowering the people in the business who have a people responsibility, whatever that, however big or small that responsibility may be. It's HR's job, it's talent development's job to empower those people to learn how to be great leaders, to how to get the best out of their people. And when that's unlocked, it spreads like wildfire. But unlocking it can be a challenge.
Right. Nice. Thanks for the encouraging words. Also the encouraging words for you. So people waiting for change, waiting to have this new type of talent development, leadership development. Want to close off by thanking you. Thank you for being on our show and sharing your wisdom about leadership development and the relation to talent development. For the viewers and listeners out there, if they want to reach you, how can you do that?
Reach me through email, very simple, lisa@leadershiplabs.eu. Lots of information on my website as well about what Leadership Labs is about and what's available to you through that. And also on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the usual channels. Just look for me and you'll find lots of great information and tools that I hope will be useful to you. Because it is really important, and I need you to be able to do the work that I do. So I would really invite you to join me on this journey. It's important.
All right. Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Thank you once more. It was
Thank
great
you.
to have you on our show. A little bit of a high five.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank
here we
you.
go. So that was it for today. Hope you learned a lot about talent development, leadership development. I sure know I did. So thanks once more. Hopefully, hope to see you at the next episode, and have a great day. Bye.